Good morning, this is Mission Control Houston. You're seeing a live view of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft attached to the end of the International Space Station's robotic arm. This is Northrop Grumman's 20th commercial resupply services mission. Now that the spacecraft has successfully delivered more than 8,200 pounds of cargo to the space station, the spacecraft is set to depart after a 162-day stay. Similar to ships here on Earth, each Cygnus vehicle is given a nickname, and the one that you're seeing on your screen is called the SS Patty Hilliard Robertson Cygnus, named after the former NASA astronaut. I want to remind everybody today that there are no people on board this spacecraft that's leaving the International Space Station today. This was a cargo mission. We'll be following along today as Cygnus is released and subsequently maneuvers away from the space station. We're on schedule for an on-time release at 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. However, our schedule today does allow for a backup opportunity with proper lighting conditions if flight controllers need extra time. We don't expect to use our backup window today, but it's there if needed. And the Cygnus cargo spacecraft will go on to distance itself from the space station, and though our live coverage will end, Cygnus will go on to burn up harmlessly in Earth's atmosphere, getting rid of 7,359 pounds of waste on Saturday at approximately 10:55 a.m. Central Time, 11:55 a.m. Eastern.
Houston, station on 2 for Cygnus release. Stand by for your go in step 1.
Copy TC, SSRMS is at the Cygnus release position and the MSS is configured for hot backup. So you have a go for step 1, procedure 1.602 Cygnus release and departure monitoring. Also, we're going to give you the planned release time is on time at 1100 GMT.
Roger, I have a go for step 1 in 1.602 and release time is as published 11 o'clock.
You just heard a conversation there between Capcom Alex Konalenkos and NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. She's inside the International Space Station's cupola this morning. She'll provide an extra set of eyes to assist those on the ground this morning. You're looking at a live view of flight controllers here in Mission Control. They are working with their counterparts at Northrop Grumman's Control Center in Dulles, Virginia on today's departure. Today's operation is ground-based, meaning that the people here on Earth are working this operation. And Tracy Dyson is just providing an assist. We'll have officers overseeing the spacecraft and the robotic arm and maintain the safety of the space station. There are 9 people living aboard the International Space Station now. We have NASA astronauts, Mike Barrett, Matt Dominic, Jeanette Epps, Tracy Dyson, and not shown here, we also have, of course, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. We also have 3 cosmonauts, Alexander Grabenkin, Nikolai Chub, and Oleg Kononenko. This spacecraft that you're seeing on your screen kicked off its mission on Tuesday, January 30th. It launched atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The spacecraft carried more than 8,200 pounds of science experiments and supplies. On board, the spacecraft contained spacewalking equipment, food, and some technology demonstrations as a few examples of some of the cargo that was delivered.
Copy 1035 open, 1140 closed, as published.
About 2 hours after liftoff, Cygnus deployed both of its cylindrical solar arrays, and it continued to make its way to the space station, arriving 2 days later on February 1st. NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara captured the spacecraft using the robotic arm, and ground controllers successfully installed Cygnus to the Earth-facing port on the space station's Unity module, where it has been for the past 162 days.
Also, the ground will take action on 2 of the crew calls. The grapple pin has exited the lee. That's when the ground will start back away on the crew call with the video. And then 1.5 meter clearance is when the ground will start motion for no video or switch to course rates. When UTC have visually verified 4.5 meters of clearance, you may proceed with step 4 of 1.602. Lastly, TC, you are not responsible for sending any of the MSS-related commands, even if we get in failure scenarios. How copy?
I copy all. Thanks.
You just heard our Capcom communicating to our astronaut up aboard the International Space Station with an overview of some of the procedures that she'll be looking out for, as well as some communication that will happen between them in real time. You may have heard our Capcom refer to her as TC. That would be Tracy Caldwell Dyson. That's just a nickname for her. We're about 22 minutes away from the expected release of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft that you're seeing there on your screen. It'll be released from the space station's robotic arm. Let's go over a little bit about what is going to go on today, but let's start with earlier this week. So the astronauts aboard the space station finished packing up Cygnus with trash and waste, and then on Thursday, NASA astronauts Matt Dominic and Tracy Dyson worked to close out the spacecraft and ultimately get Cygnus ready for its departure. That included closing the hatch door and prepping the spacecraft for its uninstallation. Today, early in the morning, flight controllers received a go to demate the spacecraft. Beginning around 2 a.m., they started uninstalling the cargo spacecraft from the Earth-facing port of the Unity module. Again, a ground-based operation. So before we went on the air today, ground controllers removed Cygnus from the side of the International Space Station using the robotic arm, maneuvering the spacecraft into the position that you see on your screen here. This is its release position. But before the Cygnus cargo spacecraft is released from the robotic arm, Flight Director Diane Daly will pull her flight controllers and the Northrop Grumman team to ensure that the SS Patty Hilliard-Robertson is ready for release. We expect that go, no-go pull in just over 10 minutes from now. There's Diane Daly there in the blue. She's our flight director, the conductor of our orchestra today, overseeing all the teams of flight controllers here in the room. In order to give her a go, the spacecraft's onboard systems must be functioning, and the space station must be in a configuration to be ready for the spacecraft's departure. About 5 minutes after the ground-based release, Cygnus will be flying free and move itself into a position for its departure burn. The departure burn will start, lasting about 3 minutes. and this will bring the spacecraft out of what's known as the station's keep-out sphere. This is a safety boundary put in place for visiting spacecraft. And Cygnus will continue to drift away for just over 15 more minutes after that, and it will exit another invisible boundary around the space station known as the approach ellipsoid. At this point, joint operations between NASA and Northrop Grumman will stop, and Northrop Grumman will be responsible for deorbiting their spacecraft. So that one departure burn will take Cygnus into a 24-hour safe trajectory away from the space station. This means that in the unlikely event of an emergency, when Cygnus is out of the approach ellipsoid, flight controllers have confidence that it would not harm the International Space Station within the first 24 hours. Again, we don't expect that to happen, and everything is proceeding nominally. We expect release in just under 20 minutes. All right, so we're looking at a slightly different view of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft right now. This time is we're inside the International Space Station's cupola. We're looking at a screen that has a camera view on that Cygnus cargo spacecraft we've been talking about today. It's got some data overlays. This is the view that NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson has available to her. I want to bring your attention, it's a lot of numbers here up on your screen, but if you look on the very right side, the bottommost number, you see something that says VV to ISS. This means visiting vehicle, so Cygnus is a cargo spacecraft, it's visiting, even though it's about to depart, to the ISS. So it is about 17 meters away. Remember earlier today that Cygnus was uninstalled from the International Space Station's port, so it's hanging out on the robotic arm about 17 meters away. The number isn't really moving, so it's in a stationary position on the robotic arm, but soon when the robotic arm releases its hand, its latching end effector, when it unfurls its fingers, that number is expected to increase as Cygnus moves away from the International Space Station.
Houston Station on 2. Photos from the SCU swap out are on SSC 13.
Houston copies.
This is a live view of the International Space Station's flight control room. As we talked about earlier, Flight Director Diane Daly is overseeing today's spacecraft departure. Daly is the 99th flight director in NASA history, becoming certified in 2021. Prior to becoming a flight director, she worked numerous technical roles here in Mission Control. There she is in the blue. Her role today is to work closely with her team of flight controllers to oversee today's operation. The visiting vehicle today is Nick Lopez, and the Capcom, there sitting next to Diane Daly, is Alex Konalenkos. You may hear his voice communicating up with NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson up on the space station periodically. Of course, Northrop Grumman has a team at its facility in Dulles, Virginia as well. And we are in joint operations now with their team, but they'll take over when Cygnus has left the vicinity of the space station. Today's departure is a ground-based operation, so all of the people that I mentioned are here on Earth, but Tracy Dyson will provide an extra set of eyes from the space station and be able to step in the unlikely event of an emergency. We're less than 15 minutes away from the planned release of Cygnus from the robotic arm. We're just over 3 minutes away from the go-no-go poll that will happen here in Mission Control between flight controllers as well as the flight controllers over in the Dulles facility for Northrop Grumman to our flight director, Diane Daly. With a go, we expect Cygnus release in just over 12 minutes from now. All of our events that we're going to be going through today will lead ultimately to Cygnus for Cygnus to re-enter the atmosphere when a fiery re-entry. On Saturday, the Cygnus cargo spacecraft will exit its orbit in two parts. First, it will execute a descent delta velocity burn. The engines will fire for 20 minutes, slowing the spacecraft by 156 miles per hour. This slows the spacecraft to lower its altitude. Then, 4.5 hours later, the spacecraft performs a re-entry delta velocity burn, or an RDV burn. This engine firing lasts just less than 10 minutes, once again slowing down the spacecraft, this time by 76 miles per hour. So this is a two-part braking maneuver to lower Cygnus's velocity so it can slip out of orbit. We expect Cygnus to break up harmlessly at about 10:55 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. You're seeing a real-time map of the International Space Station and its position over the world. You'll notice that on either side of the screen it looks slightly darker. This means that the International Space Station is exiting an orbital nighttime, so we should get really good visibility on the Cygnus cargo spacecraft while it's in a daytime. It will have daylight on it, providing really good visibility for teams here on the ground and for Tracy Dyson.
Janet, go ahead on 2.
Yes, sorry, I was on Spacecraft 3 initially. So I have the camera set up on SOT 8, and I wanted to know how the view was for you.
And we like the view, Janet.
Okay, copy. Thanks.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2 for Tracy.
Go ahead, Alex.
Tracy, we wanted to let you know that you may see some funnies on your visiting vehicle overlays as the Cygnus nav filter that is driving those overlays is a little bit suspect this morning. Please know that this filter is not what we use for navigation. It's just driving your overlays, and we just wanted to give you a heads up. Perform your monitoring per procedure.
Thanks for the heads up, and I think the products I reviewed mentioned something about that, so I appreciate the reminder.
Great. You have a go for Cygnus configuration checks. Perform step 2 in 1.602 Cygnus release and departure monitoring.
2 and work.
That conversation between our Capcom Alex Kanalenkos and our astronaut up on the International Space Station monitoring today's procedure, NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. Alex communicating about that overlay data screen that we saw a little bit earlier, that what she's seeing is not, if she sees any inadvertent data that is not quite matching up, that's okay. It's not necessary for this Cygnus operation, and that everything is proceeding nominally. She can continue her monitoring procedures as planned.
I don't think, but I can verify the green.
The go, no-go poll is underway here in Mission Control to release the Cygnus cargo spacecraft from the International Space Station's robotic arm.
As well in that view.
And Tracy, the first part of your comm just got clipped. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, in the second check, verify the Cygnus lights visible. I don't think that out the window view I have a clear view of the lights, but in the in the S1 lower outboard monitor 1 view, I can make out a green light, and I think the white nav light. Was there something else I was to look at?
Good checks.
Okay, and also the command path light is steady now, but it was blinking earlier.
No concerns.
All right, with that, Cygnus configuration checks are complete, and the crew is ready for release and departure.
Copy.
The go, no-go poll it continues on here in Mission Control Houston.
Group station on Space Ground 2 for SOT 8.
And Janet, go ahead on 2.
I don't know if you noticed in the camera when I looked at the back of the laptop, the inlets and the fan ports were clogged with dust and other particles. So I'm going to grab a vacuum cleaner to kind of clean it out on your go.
And Janet, thanks for Thanks for the offer. Yeah, we take you up on that. And let's move on to Spacecraft 3 after this.
Okay, copy and welcome.
Less than 4 minutes to go until the expected release of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft.
Station Houston on 2 for Cygnus departure.
Go ahead for Cygnus departure.
TC, you have a go for Cygnus departure on time. Perform steps 3 and 4 in 1.602 Cygnus release and departure monitoring.
Roger, steps 3 and 4 on time.
Mission Control reports that they are go for release. Our Capcom Alex Kanalenkos relayed that information to NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, who also confirmed that she has good visuals on the spacecraft and that everything is proceeding on time for a release at just less than 3 minutes from now. Our robotics officers here in Mission Control have also communicated to our flight director, Diane Daly, that they are ready. They're ready to release the latching end effector, also known as the hand of the robotic arm, to release its fingers from the Cygnus cargo spacecraft. You're seeing a live view of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft at the end of the Canadarm2 robotic arm of the International Space Station. Remember that the astronauts themselves are not the ones controlling the arm. This is a ground-based operation, and robotics controllers here in Mission Control are in charge. They received a go, and robotic officers are sending the command to the robotic arm to open up the snares on the robotic arm's latching end effector, the lee, meaning the robotic arm will open up its hand, releasing the spacecraft. We got confirmation that the International Space Station thrusters are inhibited. This means that flight controllers have disabled the space station's thrusters. They do this because when the robotic arm releases the spacecraft, they need the space station to stay in the same orientation with no motion. And they want to make sure that there will be no automatic thruster firings.
Station Houston on 2 for release. ISS thrusters inhibited and ground M1 is go for release on time.
Copy, go. Cruise.
Less than 30 seconds to go.
Copy. Release commanded.
You're looking at a live view now from the International Space Station's robotic arm, where they just sent the command to release the Cygnus cargo spacecraft. The robotic arm's hand is unfurling to let Cygnus go at the command of the robotics officers here in Mission Control, and we'll soon begin to see the spacecraft flying free away from the arm.
Snares open. Begin monitoring for drift out.
Copy.
Those snares that Alex Gonalenkos was just talking about, that's on the latching end effector, the hand of the robotic arm. It is continuing to unfurl its fingers. Cygnus was successfully released from the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:01 a.m. Central Time while the space station was flying over the South Atlantic. The spacecraft will continue to back away from the space station for the next 4 or so minutes.
And has exited the lee. Go for back away.
Copy. Proceeding to back away.
The Cygnus cargo spacecraft is now free of the International Space Station's robotic arm and we're going to see movement here in just a couple of seconds here as the Cygnus cargo spacecraft starts to back away and start to orient itself into a position to begin its departure burn.
Back away in progress.
Roger, we see good motion.
Copy, good motion.
You can see a live view now on your screen, the Cygnus cargo spacecraft beginning to back away, and NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson confirmed that she sees this happening as well.
SSRMS to vehicle clearance approximately 1 point.
Copy, 1.5 meter clearance.
The next milestone that the Cygnus cargo spacecraft will undergo is the departure burn. This is about a 3-minute burn.
4.5 meter distance from SSRMS.
Copy, 4.5 meters.
This single 3-minute departure burn will move Cygnus through its next milestones, moving further and further out of first the keep out sphere and then the approach ellipsoid, these invisible safety boundaries around the International Space Station.
You're still waiting for your backway complete call.
Back-away complete.
Forward.
Station has fallen face to ground 2 for Mike and Gizmos.
And Houston, vehicle mode is depart.
Copy, vehicle mode, depart. Cygnus departure burn is in progress. Monitor departure burn, step 5 in 1.602.
Step 5, and be advised that the DCP in the cupola is not active, so I cannot move cameras from this workstation.
We copy. We'll drive cameras from the ground.
Houston on 2 for Gizmos.
Hey, Mike, let's move to space to ground 4.
Okay, stand by 1 second.
The Cygnus cargo spacecraft successfully was released from the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:01 a.m. Central Time. It was released and began to slowly drift away from the International Space Station. It's began its departure burn. It's been going on for about a minute and a half. It's halfway through. This is a 3-minute burn. Cygnus is beginning to pick up a little bit of speed as it backs away. This is a single burn, so we expect just this one departure burn to move the Cygnus cargo spacecraft out of the vicinity of the space station.
I can see that Cygnus is in the corridor.
Houston copies.
The departure burn is proceeding nominally.
Station Houston on 2 for TC.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we think that the DCP is just dim, so if you want to turn the brightness up, we can hand the camera commanding back over to you, or we're happy to command them on the ground too. Your call.
No, well, I can see Cronus going to town there, or maybe it's Robo, but no, you guys got him.
Copy. We'll keep control of the cameras.
Alexander, the Tigo and Vigo are no longer visible.
The departure burn was successful on the Cygnus cargo spacecraft. It has now moved to its next milestone. It has exited the keep-out sphere of the International Space Station. This is the first invisible boundary. It's a safety marker surrounding the International Space Station. Next, Cygnus will move through the approach ellipsoid. This is another invisible marker a little farther out from the International Space Station. So after Cygnus leaves the approach ellipsoid, we'll no longer be in joint operations, and Northrop Grumman will have control of their vehicle.
And did you copy my...
There's a graphic on your screen here of kind of a representation of the keep-out sphere and the approach ellipsoid. We're about 15 minutes away from that approach ellipsoid exit.
Just reporting that the TGO and VGOs were no longer visible.
Copy.
Alex, would now be a good time for some happy words?
This is a great time.
We're in a brief but expected handover period right now. We hope to get our live views from the International Space Station looking out at the Cygnus cargo spacecraft momentarily.
Or waste disposal, which is just as important as the things we need. And there's a lot of folks that care a great deal about the work that you all do, and we are very privileged to be the ones to watch it go and complete its mission. We just want to thank also the team for naming it after Patty. She was such a special person to all of us, and it's a privilege for her classmates to be here on board as well as on the ground to see her fly in space.
Thank you for those sweet words.
When you love somebody... Hey, Alex, hold on. When you love somebody, you gotta let them go. You gotta let Eddie go twice. Means we all really loved her. One last thing. Good luck to the Kentucky Wildcats that are on board. You got this. Crap.
Thank you, TC, for all those kind words.
It was a little help with Sunny, too.
A touching tribute there from NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. The Dr. Hilliard Robertson was a good friend and classmate to NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, who was monitoring today's departure. In 2007, Dyson brought a photo of Patty with her to the space station to honor her life. So this is a very special moment. Every Cygnus is named after a hero in the aerospace community, this one being the Dr. Patricia Hilliard Robertson. That's the individual that Tracy Dyson was talking about just now. She was one of our own NASA astronauts here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. She was an astronaut, a pilot, a medical doctor, and originally selected to join the astronaut corps in 1998 in Tracy Dyson's class. She was training for her mission to the International Space Station, but tragically lost her life before her scheduled space flight. She was 38 years old.
Station Houston, Cygnus has exited the 200-meter keep-out sphere.
Mission copies.
We're in a momentary loss of signal as the space station switches between its communications satellites, but we should get our live views back very shortly. We're just about 10 minutes past the time that the Cygnus cargo spacecraft departed from the International Space Station's robotic arm. Since then, it has completed its departure burn, which is a successful 3-minute burn that proceeded nominally. The Cygnus cargo spacecraft has also moved through the keep out sphere. That's that first invisible boundary marker that the International Space Station uses, and now it's proceeding to exit the approach ellipsoid. That's about 10 minutes away from now. NASA is in its 10th year of using the Cygnus cargo spacecraft to bring supplies to the International Space Station. Its first operational mission launched on January 9th, 2014. It was called Orb 1. So we just watched the Cygnus cargo spacecraft, a Northrop Grumman cargo spacecraft, depart the International Space Station. So why does the spacecraft that you were watching need to leave and burn up in the atmosphere? Well, there are 9 people living aboard the International Space Station now, and even though the space station is the size of a 5-bedroom house, 9 people still produce a lot of trash. And they can't just go outside and throw out the garbage. So Cygnus takes care of that by burning up the trash when it re-enters the atmosphere harmlessly. Other cargo spacecraft have the ability to return cargo back to Earth, allowing scientists to get their samples and data back from being in microgravity. But both abilities are important to our mission.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2 for TC. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we expect.
I meant to do that on 2. Go ahead.
We expect Cygnus to exit the approach ellipsoid in about 7.5 minutes.
Okay. Should I still be in the cupola?
No, not required. We were just giving you SA.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm kind of non-ceremonial. It said steps 2 to 6, and I hung out for a while, but I wasn't sure if there was anything else I needed to do.
Thank you for your support with the Cygnus release.
It was my honor, and thank you guys for that opportunity.
If you're just joining us, you're watching a live view as a Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo spacecraft, that's that white dot that you see in the middle of your screen, backing away from the International Space Station. It launched back in January to deliver more than 8,200 pounds of cargo.
Hey, good morning. I am here at the MSG. The camera is set up and just looking for your go for step 3.
And you have a go in step 1.
Okay, that step 1 is your go, right? And the internal door is closed.
And that's affirmative. The door is closed.
Okay, do you have
The astronauts aboard the International Space Station unloaded all of the cargo that arrived to them February 1st, but packed Cygnus again with trash and other unwanted items over the course of the 5 months Cygnus has been on station.
I'll wait for you to get it routed, and then I'll step into the next step 3.
The spacecraft will burn up harmlessly in Earth's atmosphere on Saturday, eliminating all of the waste inside. It's currently filled with more than 7,300 pounds of disposable cargo.
Okay, it worked.
We're less than 5 minutes away from the spacecraft exiting the approach ellipsoid. In addition to cargo, Cygnus also has the capability of reboosting the International Space Station. It did so 3 times during its 5.5-month stay. 2 reboosts happened on May 24th, and the third occurred on June 8th. All reboosts performed nominally. This is a relatively new capability for the spacecraft, having performed its first reboost for the International Space Station in 2022. The space station flies at about 250 miles overhead, but periodically it needs a boost to raise its altitude due to the atmospheric drag in the upper atmosphere. We mentioned that the Cygnus cargo spacecraft carried 8,200 pounds of cargo to the space station. The astronauts spend almost their whole working day working on technology demonstrations and scientific experiments. This mission delivered the first surgical robot in space. It tested techniques for performing robotic surgery in space that can be controlled from Earth. And Cygnus also delivered a 3D printer that can produce metal objects. This is a tech demo, so one day the printer could help us get tools and other building material in space rather than launch these heavy, bulky items with us when NASA returns to the moon.
Station Houston on 2 for Matt at your convenience.
Less than 3 minutes to go until the Cygnus cargo spacecraft makes its way through the approach ellipsoid, that safety boundary around the International Space Station. Cygnus is now moving through the approach ellipsoid. NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson has been relieved of her monitoring duties. She would not have a very good view of the Cygnus cargo spacecraft as it has now moved over almost 1,500 meters away from the space station at this point. You can see it as that white dot almost exactly right in the center of your screen. It's moving through the approach ellipsoid. While its main objective was to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, Cygnus also carries a follow-on mission.
Houston, Matt, too, go ahead. You called. Or maybe you're calling for Butch. Tough to tell.
Matt, I just wanted to follow up with you on that food bod question with the coffee. Looking up on item 17, those bobs actually are not coffee, and we were just trying to move them out of the labeled TTB for free coffee into a better location. So that's why there was probably some confusion on there.
Okay, what are they actually?
They are crew-specific food bobs.
Don't answer that question.
Yeah.
I can float down there and let
Yeah, they're crew-specific food bobs. And then
as you can hear from our Capcom, our astronauts have moved on to the other activities of their day, and we got confirmation that the Cygnus cargo spacecraft has exited the approach ellipsoid.
We are also ready for the EVA battery activities.
The SS Patty Hilliard Robertson was released from the snares of the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:01 a.m. Central Time, after having previously been uninstalled from the side of the International Space Station earlier this morning. It successfully completed its 3-minute departure burn, then continued to back away, moving through the keep-out sphere and the approach ellipsoid. We just got confirmation just a minute ago that the Cygnus cargo spacecraft has successfully moved through the approach ellipsoid, and so joint operations have ended, and Northrop Grumman's team in Dulles, Virginia, is now operating the spacecraft. This departure also opens up a port for Northrop Grumman's 21st commercial resupply mission, launching Saturday, August 3rd. That Cygnus is named the SS Francis R. Dick Scobie, after the late commander of the 1986 Challenger space shuttle. Preparations for that mission are well underway. Northrop Grumman shipped its Cygnus service module to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in late June for integration for its 21st mission. We'll have live coverage of its launch, rendezvous, and installation to the Earth-facing port on the Unity module, the same place where we just watched the Cygnus leave from today. That concludes our coverage today. Cygnus is going to go on to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere harmlessly on Saturday, early in the morning. You can follow along with blog updates from the International Space Station's blog and on social media. That concludes our coverage today. This is Mission Control Houston.